Hi everyone, welcome to Wednesday Block Home Cooking with Foodland. Have everyone here. For those of you that were with us last week, I hope you guys all did your noti chicken this week and your shoyu pork and eggplant, and I hope your tummies are nice and happy. This week, I'm really excited about the dishes that we're gonna do, and the team and I were talking about like what's this thing gonna be, and we decided to do pasta, and we decided to do shrimp, and I think it's gonna be super delicious. I do say super a lot. It is gonna be super delicious, but really delicious. And I'm looking forward to showing you guys how to do the dish, because I think if you're not doing pasta a lot, there may be some things you can learn from the pasta approach that we're gonna take here. But also the scampi we're gonna do, I think is a really delicious one. And the recipe that I learned how to do was from one of my very first chef instructors at Kapiolani Community College. His name was Chef Eddie Fernandez, and he was the executive chef at Nick's Fish Market. For those of you, the local Oahu guys that happen to be watching the class today, but was well known for their seafood, and that one stuck with me because it just hits home. And every so often I'll pull that one out, and everyone's like, wow. So I think take notes. So you have the recipe anyway, but watch how we do this thing and make it for your friends and family, and you're gonna get the same response. So let's get right into this. We'll start with we'll get the scampi going. I already peeled a lot of the shrimp here, and we're using U15s here. I know the recipe said 1620s or U15, and the count per pound is the number. So 1620 means 16 to 20 shrimp per pound. U15 means under 15 per pound. So that's a gauge of the size of the shrimp. And these are U15s, so they're nice and meaty. And what I recommend for when you're doing a dish like this, and shrimp in general, I will use the bigger sizes. The reason why I do that is because it allows me to cook them in the pan before they overcook and they turn to dry little shriveled up things. And so for me, you can get away with a 21-25, but really I think 16-20 and U15s are the way to go. Most restaurants are working with a 16-20, and that's what you're seeing like in your shrimp, trying to think, your shrimp cocktail and stuff like that. These are peeled. I'm trying to think. These are split, right? And so the ones that I got here are split already, and they're easy peeled to consider. So they've already been cut in the middle. The vein has been taken out, and all you have to do is peel the shell off like that. Now, a personal choice would be whether or not to leave the tail on. I leave the tail on because I just think it's pretty. Technically, it's not edible. A lot of restaurants will just take, I'll just show you. We'll take the tail off because that way the whole thing's edible, okay? But for this dish I'm showing you, I'll leave the tails on because I think it looks cool. So I'll finish these four. One thing I wanted to mention about the class in general today, which is really, I think, neat, is I have very few ingredients. I got pasta, I got lemon, garlic, some olive oil, butter, parsley, got the shrimp, a few condiments, but that's it. And so you don't need a lot to do this dish. And but the thing also is, if you're gonna do a dish like this, all the ingredients have to be high quality and they have to stand on their own. Lots of times when you're trying to make things that are maybe not the best quality taste good, you put a bunch of things in there to try to mask off flavors. In this dish, and a lot of the dishes that require a few ingredients, everything you use has to be on point or else the dish will not deliver, okay? So I got the shrimp and that's ready. We'll put that on the side. The other things we're gonna need are butter. I have that in the back. And by the way, for this, we're using unsalted butter. And the reason we're using unsalted butter is because salt is a preservative. And when you're buying salted butter, they're adding the salt in the butter to add shelf life. In this instance, I'm using unsalted butter because it's gonna have to be fresher because it's not gonna be able to stand on the shelf as long before it goes out of date. The other reason why I use unsalted butter is because I want control of the seasoning. If I'm using salted butter, it's already got the salt in there and I cannot add or delete because it's already in there. So those are just a couple of things that we're working with. So we're gonna need garlic for that. I got Italian parsley, Tabasco, Worcestershire, and then of course lemons. One thing I did want to mention because so far the class is very quiet, if you have questions, please use the question and answer function in the app, the Zoom app, and the team and Cheryl will be shouting the questions out to me so that I can get you guys an answer. So we'll start with cut some of this in half. I'm just gonna cut them in just quarters. I'm just cutting these so I can get the juice. And this lemon is it's a soft lemon, so you can feel all that juice in there already. If it was really firm, I'd probably roll it to soften it up. Okay, so we have our lemons here. We've got garlic. I love garlic, and so, you know, I think I said use 6 pieces in there. If you really love garlic, then you can go more. Sometimes I go more. And these cloves they're good size too. Now I'm just gonna cut the tips off, the stem pieces off, and then I'm gonna rough chop the whole thing.
Can you explain why you need to peel the shrimp?
That you don't need to peel the shrimp. I peel the shrimp so that, you know, one of the things about cooking that we do is, you know, the job of a cook or a chef is to design dishes and maximize the eating experience for the guests, right? And so, and that's what's interesting. Like when I went to cooking school in the mainland, all the fish we did, right? We fillet it, we take all the bones out, perfectly boneless fillet. In Hawaii, right? I take the whole fish and fry that whole sucker and put it on the table for you, right? So it really comes down to personal preference. If you want to, you could do this dish with the shells on, and it would actually probably impart more flavor because there's a lot of flavor in the shells, right? The only downside is you got to sit there and you got to peel the shells before you eat them. Or you could, you know, if they're really soft, I guess you could eat the whole thing. But I'll leave that for you to decide. But that's the difference. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and chop the garlic here. I'm just gonna quickly smash it to start the process.
Substitution questions.
Yes.
Can you use already minced garlic? Can you use liquid lemon juice? Do you even need to add lemon juice?
You can use the jar garlic. You can use the liquid lemon juice. And, you know, one of the things that we've talked about in other classes is the substitution piece. And I would say that if it's 5:30 and you just got home and you had a long day and, you know, it was crazy, and then you have kids and they're all screaming at you because they're hungry, use what you got. Get it on the table. Get people fed. At the same time, I want to make sure you understand that the choice you make by using a bottled garlic versus a fresh garlic, you're sacrificing, right? So it's a trade-off. You're trading convenience for flavor. Fresh chopped garlic is going to taste better than bottled garlic. Fresh squeezed lemon is going to taste better than the bottled lemon. And so that's the give and take. And for this example, I'm using peeled garlic cloves that I got from the Foodland by me, Keoni Foodland. Is it gonna be as fresh and flavorful as if I peeled the garlic from a bulb? No, but it's pretty darn close. And so for me, the trade-off is worth it. And I think you're gonna have to make decisions in your head about what is worth it and what's the trade-off that's worth it to you. I will say, if you're questioning it, then you should try both versions and see if it's worth it to you, right? It's worth it for me to do this, and there are things that I will substitute, and there are things that I will not, because I feel like the trade-off is too great. In my opinion, use fresh lemon as much as you possibly can. Use fresh chopped garlic as much as you possibly can. Use peeled garlic cloves are a very good substitution relative to peeling your own garlic cloves from a bulb. So that's kind of like where I kind of stand in my head on this.
And then can you show us what side of the shrimp you need to clean when you
Sure.
devein it?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the shrimp, right? They naturally curve this way, and when you peel the whole thing, if this wasn't deveined already, it would be like that. So if you look at it, pretend the shrimp is like leaning forward. the top part is where you would want to devein. And so all you want to do is you run your knife very lightly through the top, and you would split it out, and then there would be a vein in there that you take out. Okay, that's how you want to do it. Now we're going to chop some parsley. This is Italian parsley, and I like Italian parsley. In my head, I think it has a milder chlorophyll flavor, and you might think it's weird, but the flat Italian parsley is also called flat leaf parsley. American parsley is also known as curly leaf parsley. And for me, I prefer the mouthfeel of the flat leaf parsley versus the curly leaf. I like it texturally on my tongue and my mouth. And cooking is a lot of texture besides just taste. Taste is, to me, the combination of smell, sight, and feel, right? And so I'm gonna rough chop this. And if I chopped it super fine, it might not make a difference. But in this instance, I'm gonna rough chop it, and I can tell the difference when I eat it. So now, as you see, I did not pick this, so I'm just really roughly doing this. Some of the pieces of the coarser stem are gonna kind of get in there, and I'm willing to deal with that because overall, this parsley is tender. These are the pieces that I'm not gonna use. If you're a purist, and if I was in a restaurant, I would pick all of these because chef would be mad at me because I'm wasting. But you can also use these for soups and stocks so they don't go to waste, okay? Okay, so we have pretty much all of our prep done. This is our mise en place. Mise en place is a French term, and it means everything in its place. And as a chef or a cook, everything cooking is all about preparation, organization, getting things in the right setting so that you can really focus on doing the dish well. So we have all of our mise en place done. One of the things I am going to do now is turn my stove on to heat up. And I do have butter. The butter that I was talking about unsalted, I have taken that out and I've let it go. It's come to room temperature so that it should be spoonable, but not too soft. Okay. The other challenge that the team gave me, by the way, was to see how much butter I could use today. Today's class is about butter. So we'll see how it goes, all right? Okay, so I've got my shrimp over here. We've got the pan heating up, lemons, salt, pepper over here. We've got Worcestershire sauce, Tabasco, and we're getting ready to, I want to heat this up nice and hot. I always think about trying to heat this up sooner, but then I get caught up having a conversation with you, and then I forget that the pan gets too hot. So it might take a little bit, just give it a second to heat up. But while it's heating up, one of the things that we want to talk about here is I have a large pan, and when I'm making a dish, I want to make sure the pan size is large enough so that, especially with the shrimp, I want to try to get an even layer on the bottom. That's going to help them cook, right? If they're all stacked on top of each other, they would overcrowd the pan, and the amount of product would be too much for the heat to handle. The temperature would drop too much, and then what I would be doing is steaming, and then you're not really developing a whole lot of flavor, and you're gonna get a rubbery, just kind of flaccid shrimp, and that's not what you want. So we'll let this get nice and hot. I'll bring the rest of the product over here that we need. Well, maybe not because it's on a cutting board, so I'll grab it as we need it. I have a pot here, just kind of like prep stuff that I want to show you. So this is our water that's going to be for the pasta. And from the approach perspective, I'm going to do the shrimp first, and I have my countertop oven on warm. And so I'm going to take the shrimp and I'm going to put it in the warmer so they stay nice and warm, but not keep cooking. And the reason I'm doing that is because the pasta, when we do the pasta, I want it to be really just done for people to eat. I don't want to cook the pasta, have it sitting out there overcooking and just getting cold while I do the shrimp. In my head, the shrimp can, if I cook the shrimp just underdone, they can sit there for a little bit and wait while the pasta is cooking. And when you do a dish like this, as you start to really get into making pastas and really understanding textures and things, if you're a purist, you want to make sure everyone's sitting down at the table before the pasta is done, so that when it's done, it goes straight to the table and people can eat. While we're waiting, I'm going to put some salt in the water. That I think I sent you a list that said a 1/4 cup of salt. I'm just using regular salt here. We're gonna put it in the water here. And that's to season the water. Let's see what we got here. I'm gonna test a little bit of, put a little butter and see what happens. Okay, you see that? Looks good. Like the sound of that.
What kind of shrimp is best for this dish if you could choose between tiger shrimp, California shrimp, other shrimps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think tiger shrimp's good. Some stuff from California, Indian's good. I think what you want to what you really want to try to do is find shrimp, if you can, that are considered non-treated. A lot of shrimp that commercially is available is treated with I'm trying to think what the word is called. This polytriphosphates, and what it is it helps keep the shrimp plump, and it kind of helps them absorb moisture so that they don't dry out. The downside is that it's kind of like brining the shrimp, and it takes a little bit of flavor away. So if you can find as much as you can find untreated shrimp or shrimp that has as little of that as possible, and it's usually rated by percent, then that's that I would say you want to look for.
Did you dry the shrimp before putting it in the pan?
I did not dry the shrimp, and that's a really great question. But I did peel the shrimp earlier, and I'm gonna put a little more butter, by the way. It looks like it needs a little butter. It's looking a little dry. I need more suntan lotion. But I put it in the fridge and covered it, and the fridge kind of helped dry them out. And that's a good point. You want your product, the shrimp, to be on the drier side. So when you peel them, if they're really wet and juicy, you want to pat them down and dry them out a little bit. That'll make a big difference when you put it in a pan. And as you can see, I'm putting them in the pan, and they're not splatting, right? And it's because they're dry. And like the other part I was talking about, let's put some more butter. I want to use a lot of butter here. If you have the shrimp that have the polytriphosphates in them, tend to have a lot of moisture, and they tend to be very wet, and they don't color as well. So as you see, I'm letting them sit here, and if I had used tiny shrimp, they would have overcooked by now. Now, I'm gonna put garlic in at this point. I didn't start with the garlic, as you know. So a lot of people start with the garlic, but what happens is it would have burned by now. I want the garlic to cook and flavor the shrimp, but I do not want it to burn. So now that I've had all this other the shrimp in there, it's gonna cook, and you can smell. And my mouth is watering. Salt, pepper, I'm gonna put a little bit more butter. I need something to dip my baguette into when we're done here. That looks good. What do you guys think? What the heck? I'll put a little bit more. I'm making sauce, right? This is the sauce. Now, we're gonna add some Worcestershire sauce. It gives nice complexity to the dish and a nice kind of umami meatiness. We're gonna add some Tabasco here. Give it some heat, and a little bit of the acid in there, adds some complexity. I'm gonna turn these shrimp over real quick. Look at that. Oh yeah. Turn my heat down real low. It smells really, really good right now.
While you're doing that, can I ask you some substitution questions?
Sure, please do.
Is there something else you can use instead of parsley?
You can leave it out if you want.
Okay.
I think parsley adds color, and it also adds a light, like a fresh green flavor to the dish. I think it really is delicious. I mean, if you just hate parsley and you'd rather stab yourself and eat parsley, I get it. But if you're just not familiar with it, I think you should try it. And I think you might be surprised at what you experience from that.
Okay, and what about using fresh yuzu or calamansi instead of lemon?
Interesting. So you guys all, I don't know, man. You should have should have gotten. You should have went in the restaurant business. But I think that's a great idea, and I think that's it's an interesting use of citrus in a substitution. And like when you think about Pacific Rim cuisine, etc., it's like you take scampi, a traditional recipe which uses lemons, and you substitute with calamansi, which is a very nice a citrus flavor, or yuzu. It's another citrus, but it's a different kind of citrus flavor, and it adds a different kind of complexity to the dish. And I think it would be great. It'd be awesome. So that dish this is actually done. Look at that. So I'm adding this here, and I think it looks really yummy. And there's plenty sauce for the French bread that we're gonna have. I'll go ahead and put it in a serving dish here.
Okay, what about using red pepper flakes instead of Tabasco, and then using hoisin or oyster sauce instead of Worcestershire sauce?
Okay, so you can use red pepper flakes, and I actually do use it too. I actually sometimes when I'm just doing this for myself and I'm not doing, my son's not gonna eat it, I will put red pepper flakes. But the thing about red pepper flakes is you're gonna get little like bursts of heat because it's not throughout. And to me, red pepper flakes is one dimensional. Tabasco sauce has the vinegar in it. It's got the pepper and it's got more things going into it. So what I would actually do, this is gonna go into our holding pattern right now. What I would do is I would use both. I would do red pepper flakes and the Tabasco. The other question was about oyster sauce versus Worcestershire sauce, right? You can't, sorry.
Hoisin or oyster sauce instead of Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah, so I mean, you could, but it changes the dish a lot. To me, Worcestershire has an umami flavor. It's got kind of an interesting spicy, not hot spice, but like savory spices flavor going on. If you're using oyster sauce, that's essentially, it's kind of a sweet fermented shellfish flavor you have going on. So it can work, but you're gonna miss the layers of like, and I don't know exactly what's in Worcestershire sauce, but there's a kind of a clove essence and all that. Those characters you're gonna be giving up. And even with hoisin sauce, which is kind of a plum fermentedish flavor, it's sweet, so it can work. But you're just gonna have a different eating experience. And so if you're trying to do a more traditional scampi, I wouldn't do it. But if you're starting to get creative and you're trying to riff on things, then yeah, go for it. It'd be cool. If you're gonna do it here, if you're gonna do calamansi and yuzu, and you're gonna do some hoisin and oyster sauce, then you must use either Kauai prawns or Kahuku prawns, and just make it a whole cool kind of local Pacific Rim thing.
What about adding anchovy for added flavor?
Anchovies could work. Okay, it'd be cool because you're trying to add Worcestershire adds umami. You could, fish sauce could work too, I think, because you're adding that kind of umami character, which is kind of cool too. And I was supposed to throw this in while we're doing this because I'm trying to like layer this and practice my timing, but I didn't. So we'll have to do other things together while this is cooking. But so this is really cool. This is our Maikai organic artisanal spaghetti, and it's imported from Italy. So see, all the way from Italy. Really cool pasta that we have in our stores. And I think it's really important when you're working with a dish and you're gonna make pasta, you really want to use a good quality pasta. I'm not saying that you should go find the most expensive pasta out there, but you should commit to using really good quality, and it matters. Now, the pasta that we have here, our branded pasta that we're using, and what I love about it is, first of all, it is made with durum wheat, right? So that is the wheat that is used and make flour, typically to make pizza dough, really good pizza dough, excuse me, and pastas. And why it's important is because it is very high protein, which means that it's going to be very glutinous, and you need that kind of very high protein to have a very good elastic pasta. And when you're making pasta, what you really want is a pasta that, when it's fully cooked, is going to be elastic, But also the goal is that it shouldn't go from being elastic to mush in 3 seconds. And you don't want it to just be like rubbery either. So there's a very interesting chew that you're looking for in good pasta. And the drying process matters. The flour that's used matters. The wheat that is used matters. And I think that we have found a pasta here that hits on all marks. And this is spaghetti that we're using, by the way. This is spaghetti shape. So we'll let this cook. Now, when you're doing pasta, there are lots of theories on how to cook pasta. The way that I was taught to cook pasta is rapidly boiling salted water, and I still do it that way. I see a lot of other recipes these days that are saying you can put it in regular room temperature water. Some people even soak it before. But for me, this method is tried and true. And I do season the water because I'm seasoning the pasta while it's cooking.
What about putting oil in the water?
I do not put oil in the water. To me, and the things that I've been taught is that oil in the water doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't add. The idea was that you add water to prevent it from sticking, right? If you're using a good quality pasta, you're putting it in the water, rapidly boiling, and then you pour it out and either use it right away or you shock it with cold water to prevent the cooking. The tendency is it shouldn't stick together. And if it does stick together a little bit, what I do is I just rinse it really quickly with cold water, and then it helps the pasta noodles to come apart again. So I don't use oil. I don't think you need to use oil. But if that's something you like to do, then please do so. So we're cooking this. It's starting to bend. This cooks, it'll be 8 to 10 minutes roughly. So while this is cooking, why don't we work on a salad here? When I thought about the dinner we're gonna do here, I wanted to do something that we're gonna have a pasta, right? And it's gonna have butter in it, and it's gonna have pepper. It's kind of rich. And then we have our shrimp, which has butter in it, right? It's kind of rich. So I thought, well, what can we do that's going to be cleansing, that's also simple? And when you think about the dish, right, the dishes tonight are simple, but they're really delicious. So the shrimp only has a few ingredients and it's already ready to go, right? So if you were just going to do that dish by itself, you can get on the table quickly. The pasta can be done by itself and it can be on the table relatively quickly. And by the way, you could do these together, but I will agree with everyone that there's a lot of butter. And if you want to be indulgent and treat yourself, then please enjoy. That said, you could also do them separately and you can enjoy moderation. So here's a salad that we're gonna do here, which very quickly. This is arugula. And I'm using arugula because I want something that it's considered a bitter green. It's a little nutty in its flavor profile. It's nutty. It has a little bitterness, and I think it's going to cut through all the fat that we're going to be having with the other dishes. And I think it's a good complement. So we also have some tomatoes here. You are a very quiet crowd today.
What temperature do you have the toaster oven on?
I have it at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. I just want to keep it warm without overcooking the pasta. The shrimp. These are whole farms tomatoes, by the way, in case you're not familiar. Local farmer, really delicious tomatoes they make. And this is their family. They call it their family. I think so. Their toy box, their variety. Family tomatoes. If you guys are here in Hawaii, you should try some amazing tomatoes. So I'm gonna put them on here. You could toss this if you wanted to with your own dressing beforehand, but I wanted to show you the fact that, I'll throw some of this in here too. You don't have to do a whole toss of dressing to make a good salad. I'm making a simple vinaigrette, so I got my lemon. I'm gonna squeeze some on here. We'll squeeze it just like that. You get some pepper and some salt.
Okay.
Season it.
Tell us about parsley. Tell us about flat leaf parsley, other kinds of parsley, cilantro.
Okay. Let me put some olive oil here. Hang on. So this is a broken vinaigrette, right? I put olive oil, fresh fresh lemon, salt, pepper. That's all you need in a dressing. And you're gonna have an amazing, amazing experience. I also am going to put some, need some cheese. So we'll just, using your peeler, put some cheese on there. So the salad's ready. Okay, parsley. So you got your flat leaf Italian, which we're using here. You've got American parsley, which is the curly stuff, right? Let's go over here to check the pasta. Those you can use interchangeably as parsley, right? Which is the stuff that you used to see. Let me check on these real quick. Before that was the straight up, everything was garnished with parsley, right? I'm tasting this. It's still chewy. It needs a little bit more time. But I want it to be, it's not, when I start to make the dish here, the pasta will not be completely done because it's going to carry over. I want it to finish cooking in the pan. Right now you can, if I bend it, you see how it snaps? And you can see inside here, it's still not quite cooked. It's very close though. I'm gonna stick it against the wall. So those are the two parsleys, right? You can get, American parsley is very widely available. It was very affordable. Italian parsley tends to be a little bit more expensive. Like I said, I feel like I like the mouthfeel. I think it's I feel like I perceive it to be milder as well. Chinese parsley or cilantro is a whole different thing. It has a whole different flavor. It's much mild. It's much more tender. A lot of people just like can't stand it. It's one of those love-hate things. Over time, I used to hate it. I love it now. But you know, it's a key ingredient in a lot of Asian cooking, Chinese cooking. Super key ingredient in a lot of Mexican dishes, right? Salsa, guacamole, things like that. But I would not interchange them. If a recipe calls for American parsley and you have Chinese parsley, typically not interchangeable. Now I'm taking some of this pasta water. I'm going to save this because this is going to be actually the base, part of the base of what we're getting ready to do here. And you see that? That's seasoned water, and it's going to help to continue to enhance the dish that we have here. I'm going to drain this real quick.
Can you remind us what kind of cheese you put on the salad?
I used Parmesan, and that actually is Reggiano Parmigiano, which means that it's Parmesan cheese from the region, from the Reggiano region. And so for it to be called Reggiano Parmesan, it can only come from that region. It is inspected, it is certified. You can get Parmesan from other regions or Parmesan style. You might have heard of something called Grana Padano, which is a similar style. Or you might be buying Parmesan cheese that is not from Reggiano, and it's just called Parmesan, that may be made in the United States. We have a lot of Parmesan cheese makers, and it's a good quality product, but the tradition of the Parmesan cheese, if you think about it, comes back to the Reggiano region. So looking at the noodles here, they're looking much better. Still a little chewy, but that's exactly what I'm looking for. Now, we'll turn the heat back on. I'm gonna start by putting some of this pasta water in the pan here. And this is the base for our sauce. What is important about this sauce that we're doing here is cacio pepe means cheese and pepper. And so the key ingredients are, well, there's butter, but there's also cheese that's gonna go in there and a lot of cracked pepper. But this water here, with some of the flour from the pasta, is going to actually be the liquid for our sauce, and this is what's going to help emulsify everything together. Typically, if I was doing this in a restaurant, I would have taken the pasta out of the water and throw it straight in the pan here, hit it with some of the water, and start to emulsify everything together. But because I'm doing a little bit of a larger portion size, I'm kind of doing it in a different sort of a modified step. And I wanted you guys to be able to see what we're doing here. Now I'm going to take some of this pasta, being mindful of the size of the pan because I don't want to overcrowd the pan. We'll put some of that in here. I feel like this is about as much as I want to put in here, or else I'll overcrowd it. Now, see this extra pasta here? You know, we're talking about sticking the oil. I'm going to put it in here and I'm going to shock it real quick with cold water because I want to arrest the cooking. I want it to stop cooking. And I can save this if I'm going to come back and use it for something else. It will not have overcooked. Okay. So now I'm looking at this. It's looking a little dry to me. So I'm going to add a little bit more water. And I'm going to begin the process of bringing this dish together. Butter in. And I want this to emulsify in, okay? I don't want it to look like a broken sauce. Salt, a little bit because the water was already seasoned, right? Remember we seasoned the water with the salt before we cooked the pasta? And then I'm gonna start to move this around. I wanna keep an eye on the butter. I wanna see the butter emulsifying. And you see how it's looking creamy? That's what I want, okay? I'm turning the heat down to very low. I'm gonna actually move it off a little bit. I'm gonna add more butter. I don't want it to boil too hard because it may break the sauce. This is almost like you're making a beurre blanc, okay? You see how creamy the sauce looks right now and how shiny and luxurious this looks? Next, pepper. Gotta find my pepper grinder. And I like pepper. I'm gonna go coarse. So you wanna use fresh cracked pepper because fresh cracked pepper has all the essential oils still in it. It has a nutmeggy quality to it. And all of that gets lost. All these little very subtle hints of the peppercorn get lost if using pre-ground pepper. So really you should commit to, they have the McCormick and other brands have this, you know, those little grinders. Totally worth it if you don't have one of these. It's gonna like transform your cooking if you're willing to just get one of those. And they're not that expensive. It's really worth it. They last a long time. Okay. Next thing that's gonna go in here, cheese. I have two kinds of cheese we're gonna use. I have the Parmesan, and this is the Reggiano, right? And I have Pecorino. This is and I'm using a paper towel. I don't want to keep touching this with my hands because I want this to last a long time. If I touch it with my hands, I will spoil the cheese. So I'm holding it with a paper towel. I'm gonna grate some of that in there, very lightly. And please do not use pre-grated cheese. Pre-grated cheese, hang on for a second. This is Pecorino. This is cow's milk, sheep's milk. This is gonna be nuttier, almost fruity quality. This is gonna be milder, and it's softer. But you want both of these cheeses because it gives different characters. If you only have one, that's fine. But if you do both, you'll see the difference. Now, like I was saying, oh, by the way, you see how dry this is starting to look? Because all of this coming together, the cheese is thickening it. I'm gonna add a little bit more liquid. If you use the pre-grated cheese and you're doing this, you will find that the cheese will not melt into your sauce because when they pre-grate it, they add anti-caking agents into it. And the anti-caking agents also coat the cheese and prevent it from really melting well. If you have it, great, use it for salads or stuff like that. But I would not use it to add it into things like pasta like this, or if you're making something like risotto, things like that. It does not melt into the dish.
Can you tell us why touching cheese with your hands spoil it?
Yes, because your hands are dirty. Your hands have bacteria on them, and the nature of touching all of that transfer the bacteria onto the food, and it gets on the food, and then it causes it to spoil. One of the things, if you've noticed that in your cooking at home, excuse me, let me get a little bit more water. See how dry this looks? I want it to be a little bit more, I want it to move better, so I'm gonna add a little bit more of that stock. If you notice that food spoils quickly at your home, a couple of things you should look at is one, the temperature of your refrigerator. If it's not running cold enough to be at about 38 degrees, the food will spoil. Or if you're touching food a lot with your hands, be your bare hands. When I touch stuff in my fridge, If I'm not going to use it right away, I don't touch it. I'll use a spoon or a utensil, or I try to use a piece of paper towel or something to touch it, because my hands, there's tons of bacteria on your hands, and it gets into whatever it is that you're touching, and then that's how things spoil pretty quickly.
Is your stove on, and what temperature?
The stove is on right now. I turned it on to low right now because I just wanted it to be warm. It was high when I started. This is looking really good. Come, let's go on this side. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in a dish in here, and we're almost there. Are there any other questions I can ask as we get close to wrapping this up?
Sure, yes. So if you keep having to add pasta water, isn't it going to make the dish bland or take away from the flavor?
I don't think so, because first of all, we're using seasoned water, so there is the pasta flavor. You can taste the pasta in the water. It's not straight water. The other thing is I keep adding lots and lots of cheese, right? So what I'm just trying to find is the right balance of cheese to butter to pepper to pasta water, and all that is coming together nicely. And I think it's really nicely coated. If I was a cook in the kitchen and I saw myself do this dish, I'd give myself a pat on the back. I'm actually really excited about that. So we're gonna wrap this up here. I added a little bit more pepper. I'm gonna add a little more cheese here.
Okay, what about adding butter from the shrimp to give the noodles more shrimp flavor, buttery shrimp flavor?
I would not, because the butter is already broken, and so it's going to be a broken sauce. And the dish I'm showing you is a classic Italian dish. So cacio pepe is a classic dish that doesn't have all that stuff in there. If you wanted to, you could totally do it. You changing the dish a lot. In that instance, I would maybe do something different. Like I would maybe cook pasta and I would toss the shrimp and everything into it and make a pasta dish out of that, which is kind of like taking your license with it. But I thought it'd be fun to show you a traditional dish here, and I wanted you to show how you can make a really delicious dish with no ingredients, right? It has butter, pepper, cheese, water, and pasta, and that's it. And I wanted you to see, and I hope you would make this, because I think you'll see how you can make amazing, delicious food with essentially nothing, right? And it's all about the care and attention that you take to making a dish like this, and it'll come out really, 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 really amazing.
Okay, so someone's making the dish and it's clumping up. So why is it clumping up?
Are you using the pre-grated cheese?
I don't know, but what can they do to save it at this point?
At this point, if you're using pre-grated cheese, you're probably gonna stick with that. You can try to add more water to try to break it up, to keep it warm. But the reason my guess is you might have been using like a container of pre-grated cheese, and it's all the anti-caking agents that are around the cheese that's not really bringing it together. I'm going to add some lemon slices here, just for color and garnish. You should still eat the pasta, even if it's clumping a little bit. It's still going to be delicious. You're going to have a few clumps in there, but it'll be fine. And the next time you make the dish, grate the cheese in there, and then you'll just see the differences in the execution. I think you'll find that it might be a little waxy, but you'll still be fine.
Romy wrote back and says he's not using pre-grated cheese.
Oh, really?
So why would it be clumping, and would he just keep adding water to it to declump it?
You can try adding a little bit of water, but also make sure the temperature is right. Make sure it's really, really hot so that it can work. And if it's clumping, it maybe, to your point, if it looks really dry and the noodles are all stuck together, that's why I kept adding a little bit water a little bit at a time. You might have added maybe too much cheese to start with, and it's just seizing on you. So start adding the water and start stirring it, and it should start. You're trying to find equilibrium between the liquid and the cheese in there.
And earlier you used the term broken. What did you
Yes.
mean by that?
Broken would be like right now. When you look at this sauce here, it looks creamy, right? And it's I guess it would be opaque. Broken would be here. I'll show you what broken looks like. Here, give me a second. Broken would look like this. If you can see the butter that looks like that in the dish, that looks separated and greasy and oily, that's broken. And what that means is the butter is emulsified. When you look at a piece of butter, it looks like this because there's water and dairy that's in a suspended state that is emulsified. And what we're trying to do is when we're making this sauce, we're trying to keep it like that. If you put it in there and you don't do it right, it will break and it'll look like this. This is broken. It's separated. The butter fat is separated from the water and the dairy solids. In this instance, the dairy solids are what help brown the shrimp. The water evaporated when I was sauteing it, and then the butter fat is just sitting in there with lemon juice in there. And so that's the difference.
A lot of questions about cheese.
Yes.
What is the best way to store cheese so it doesn't get moldy? And can you freeze the cheese to keep it lasting longer?
Okay, so I don't know about the freezing of cheese. You can try. It probably will work. I don't know what happens when you defrost it though. This piece of Reggiano Parmesan that I have in my hand here, I've had in my fridge probably for a year. Now, the thing that I do with this, and it's expensive, right? The piece when I bought it was this big. And I only use it when I'm doing things like this, okay? And so what I do is I keep it wrapped in a piece of paper and I keep it in a plastic bag and I keep it in the fridge. And whenever I use it, I put it in a new plastic bag. And when I take it out of the bag, I don't touch it with my hands. And that's a big deal that we're talking about. The other thing is occasionally on the pieces, you may get a little bit, you may start to get a little bit of mold, but you scrape it off. And that's what a lot of cheesemongers do. And hard cheeses like this, you just scrape it, okay? But moisture is also your enemy. So I make sure that I don't get it wet. I keep it dry. And when I put it in the bag, I make sure it's dry. And like I said, I'm not afraid to use another bag to store it because the cost of a bag relative to one of these, like 20 something dollars a pound, right, is going to make a difference. Now, the cool thing is I probably bought this when it was considered, I don't know, whatever, 2 years old. And they sell them in different ages. The more aged it gets, the more nutty it gets, the more expensive it gets too, right? So I bought this and actually I'm aging it as I'm using it. So that's kind of the fun part. And the character of the flavor changes over time.
Cheesemonger watching. So he said exactly the same thing that you did. He said if you face your cheese, so gently scrape the surface to remove oils, it will keep longer. Please do not freeze your cheese.
All right. I'm with you. So any other questions? I mean, we're done here and I'm happy that we can keep talking, but
can you plate it for us?
Ooh, sure. So what I would do if I was, I would serve it first of all family style, right? And everyone kind of serves themselves, but take some of the pasta here. When you put on your plate, when it comes down here, you bring it down and you turn so you can maintain some of that height. Put a few pieces of shrimp here. I would put maybe, I designed this for about four proportion. Get some of the sauce to come on the plate here. Put a little lemon there. Get some salad. And then gotta have a hunk of bread. I know we have the pasta that's carbs, but I'm gonna show you because you're gonna want to do this, right? You take some of this. This is the flavor right here. Put some of that on the plate, and you dip your butter and your bread into that as you're eating this. And just if you want to be a little bit of, you want to be a little indulgent, take a little bit of more cheese, put some on the top. There you go. We have a Wednesday night dinner, shrimp scampi with cacio pepe and a very simple arugula salad with a little bit of baguette. Hope you guys had fun today. I hope you guys learned something. We had some cool conversation about pasta and cheese. So thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing you next week. I thought it'd be fun to do something. We'll go back to sort of like Hawaii local stuff. So I think the foundation of one of the dishes is going to be bitter melon. So thinking bitter melon with some ground pork, maybe some fermented Chinese black bean, and maybe we'll do something with opal squash, maybe a soup of some kind, but really good, simple comfort food to be eating on a nice bowl of hot rice. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Please have a good week and please make the dishes and send us pictures. We'll see you next time.